Hey, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. Good morning, Ben. Good morning, Lalit. Danny is always at every office hours. He's a trooper. Welcome. Today, I'm here with Liz Wiltsie, and we're going to be going over her field guide to naming your needs at work, which is pretty unique. So, Liz, I would like to hear a little bit more about what you do and what this project is all about. So who are you, Liz?
Hi, everyone. First, I'm a Notion user, and Marie is the reason I'm a Notion user, which is actually pretty fun. So I came to office hours with you and Tara, and here we are. So Tara McMullen.
Very cool. Yep.
What works for folks who don't know that. And so I feel a little bit like you're kind of like the fairy godmother for this piece of work, which
I just whisper in people's ears and they eventually
and then it happens, right? The first time I ever saw you do like a hash command, I was like, oh, like a slash, right?
Yeah.
I was like, how are you doing that? And now I do it. It's great.
Every day, all day long.
Every day, all day. So the shortest way to explain my work is that I focus on helping folks name their needs at work. And part of what that journey is a whole lot of us have been socialized to believe that we don't have to have needs. In COVID, that becomes a little bit clearer that we really do. We have them, that we need them. It would be nice if they got met. And folks who are sort of on that journey and realize they can maybe have needs, maybe they can get met. They certainly can't get met at work. We all sort of live in fear of losing our jobs, or if we work for ourselves, we live in fear of losing our clients. Similar ideas. And so because of that, we've actually never even sat down to name them. And if we don't know we can have needs, and then we haven't named them, they can't get met. We like sit in our everyday lives imagining that people should be clairvoyant and know what we need. You know, how many of us have said out loud, they should just know. I have this conversation with my mom all the time. They should just know. They should know that
they should know better.
They should know better. They should have been raised better, right? This is the discussion with my mom always. They should have been raised better. You can dig on that however you want. And so the field guide is meant as a tool to start getting at what are those needs. And so it's important for me to note, this comes out of, I've been doing some sort of leadership development for close to 15 years on one spectrum or another. And until 3 years ago, I did not know you could have needs at work.
A lot of us still didn't know.
I actually didn't know you could have needs at all. I was the person who was like, I want to be in the smallest box. I want to be the lowest maintenance person in the room. That's how I will have friends. That's how people will like me. Right. And that transfers to work. I've worked in Silicon Valley. I've been a super high performer. That's not to say I'm not anymore, but like I've lived that life of like, never say die kind of life. And 3 years ago, I moved to Los Angeles, which I love, and we can have a deeper conversation about it another moment. I moved to Los Angeles and got involved with an organization called White People for Black Lives and Aware LA, which is the Alliance of White Anti-Racists Everywhere, Los Angeles. And Aware LA has actually existed for 17 years. And it works in active solidarity with Black Lives Matter, Los Angeles. And in doing that work, I started to learn about the modern abolition movement. I've done some version of anti-racist work for almost 20 years, but it hadn't gotten to abolition because reasons. And in that, there are so many concepts in the modern abolition movement that say we have to be able to be whole people. We have to be able to be complex humans who are accountable and who are working for community and for care. And that idea was the first time I've heard that In that context was the first time someone ever asked me, how can I support you? Ever, right? So we're talking about 3 years. So a lot of what has become the field guide are things that I worked through as exercises and then tested. I run a community around this concept. And so at first I thought it was just me, and then I realized it wasn't just me.
What did that process look like of discovering other people were also kind of struggling with this, or were maybe just realizing this was a thing?
Yeah. So I come at it from a trauma-informed lens, which a trauma-informed lens, and the easiest way to think about it is to hold space for human complexity and to really lean into people having choices and to being accountable. Like, that's what trauma-informed means. And so not to say, I know what you need, but to really work with people to figure that out for themselves. So in all of that, I started a community at the beginning of 2020. I thought the world was going to look different. Here we are. I started it, and I knew we needed to get on the same page. And so the first thing we talked about was actually resourcing ourselves. In that, I had to say, what do I mean when I say needs? What do I mean? And so that frame came there. And then in working in community with other folks, I learned that was the thing. That was the thing that we should be talking about. And that was the thing that so many people haven't been able to do, particularly if you work at a mission-driven organization. So that can be a nonprofit. It can be a company that you just really, really believe in their mission. Doesn't have to be nonprofit. But it gets even harder because you're like, well, this organization is doing really great work in the world. How can I possibly not run myself ragged trying to do everything I need to do when really we're often under-resourced and we're often overwhelmed at work, even in jobs that we truly, truly love. And the catch-22 of that is we can't be sustainable in that. Yeah. We can't continue to do the work that we're trying to do, which right now folks are organizing, folks are working, folks are doing all those things at once. And so if you are constantly living outside of your own capacity, then
people burn out.
Right? And you can't do it. So so the field guide is a way to start having that conversation with yourself, really. So
I love that. So it's like a tool for personal development.
Yes.
Yeah. At a very, very approachable price point, right? It feels like a self-therapy using Notion. I love it.
It's trying to be. Although if I didn't have to pay my rent, I would give everything away for free. And I can't, right? Can't.
Got to name those needs.
Right. Need to pay my rent.
Mom's got to pay the bills. Yeah. Love it. Well, if you're comfortable to do your screen share, why don't we jump in and you can kind of walk us through the field guide in any capacity that you think is interesting. I thought your website was so great, even the way you actually present the field guide as well. I added a link to the bottom if folks want to check out that field guide with that call to action. But the site is beautiful itself, and the way you show the screen caps and show the video.
Thank you.
And we've been having a lot of conversations around like monetizing Notion and selling your templates. And once you've figured out these processes for yourself, a lot of people are actually selling their own SOPs and processes, which I think is really interesting. So I just wanted to say, I thought you did a really excellent job in the way you presented the field guide. And so I'm excited to go behind the scenes and check it out.
Thank you. So I'll show folks as much as, and right now, as I'm doing this, I can't see the chat. So if there's something that someone wants to know, if people just tell me, that's great. But my general feeling as a person who knows how to build stuff is that if you want to build it, you're going to build it. Feel free. Um, if you want to not have to build it and you want to be in conversation about it, then great. So I tend to err on the side of, I'll show
Sharing
you.
more. Yeah.
And the video on my website walks through it pretty significantly. It doesn't have everything in it, but you could get the idea. And if you wanted to build a thing in Notion that was like, here's all of the stuff that I need, great, please do that. So the big mood of the field guide is just reminding us that we're allowed to have needs at work and that it's important. And then the second piece is to have all of the stuff in one place so that, like, I did it. My original concept of this was a PDF, and that you could print out and color on. And what I really, really wanted was the ability for people to change it based on their own needs. So again, like in a trauma-informed way, it's not helpful to you if you're just using what I think you might need. It's helpful if you can take that question and then build on it. So that's one of the things that I actually think Notion brings to the table that potentially other platforms don't, is to be able to move things in and out and say, yeah, I'm here for that. I'm not here for this. So here we go. This is the beginning. This is the first page. There are video instructions that does walk you through some things. That's in Loom. So using a Loom integration in Notion. This is not news to people, I don't think. There's always an importance for me. If you click on the debts of gratitude, you will see, which I have a button. I can click things. The people who have influenced this work for me, and I have that on my website as well. It's just important. So it's not necessarily that I am citing specific things by any of these people, but like this thing wouldn't exist without this work in these ways. So it's important for me. You'll see it on most of the things that I do. There's a little spot if you want to get deeper in it with me. There's an opportunity. So in here, one of the big things that I had to do was say, what are the needs at work? And so the way that I frame them, which again, doesn't have to work for everybody, but if it resonates with you, it usually resonates pretty hard. Safety, connection, appreciation, and growth. And so this is meant to take some of the things from further pages, which I'll show you, and put them in those spots so that just on your front page, you sort of have the hot stuff. And then this is the figuring it all out. And so if you go here, we have a little discussion of polyvagal theory, survival responses, in the ways that is like the too long didn't read.
Yeah.
For this. And then the resources that I really love. Justin Sunseri has a podcast called Stuck Not Broken. He also has fantastic resources on his website that make things pretty easy to understand. I think we're having a massive nervous system response at work in general. And so when you think about the number of people you work with and the number of nervous systems, there you go. So these are the pieces that I think are important. And then some more resources. And then we get into your sort of elemental needs at work. I call them elemental needs. They can track to the elements: safety, earth, connection, water, appreciation, fire, growth, air, depending on how new agey you want to get about it. It just depends. But I like it for the graphics also. I got the icons I found on Noun Project and paid for their, you can get them for a year. So they're, in terms of showing behind the curtain, right? That's where those graphics come from. So in each of these sections, what I will always say is this is a non-exhaustive list. So If you want to add more, do it. I happen to like the call out. I like call outs. I like the way they look. I like using emojis in it. I also love that because of Notion, you can click on it and change the emoji. You can change everything about it, which, yes.
Yes.
These are things that might impact my need for safety. And also why some people who own companies get upset with me, because I will say, if you're not paying your employees well enough, you are actually impacting their safety. You're impacting their sense of safety and how well they can show up. Is that real for you? Is it not real for you? It might not be. And so in each of these, there's a shortcut to some pieces, but it also sort of flows. It has a like, do this next.
Love that. Yeah.
Connection. Again, we are wired in our brains to connect to other people. How are we connecting? To ourselves and to nature, embodied nature, etc. Appreciation. How does that work for you? Feedback, autonomy. What's your why? Money. Money is not always. Daniel Pink has some really interesting things to say in his Drive, which for anyone that doesn't want to spend the time reading the book, watch the RSA animate about Drive on YouTube, which is basically says if you're paid enough money, it's not a motivator. And then growth. What is your, which I will say, this is a change post the uprisings for me, because this one used to be called mastery.
Oh, interesting.
And I was like, I don't mean it like masters. That's not how I mean it. And in the uprisings, I was like, you know what? I can't have any part of this that feels like that's what it might be. And just as from my own, it did not feel in line with my values. And so this one, so I changed it. I was like, what are the limits of language are weird. But so growth is about what is your quest? Again, I watched a little too much Lord of the Rings in quarantine, I think. But what is your quest? How do you stand in what you're good at? So like it dovetails with sort of strengths-based stuff that you would be familiar with. And then how do you get better? What does that look like? What does that quest look like for people? So those are the actual 4 that you need to be good at things. These are talking about growing edges. So then from there, we move into charting your capacity, which again, didn't know.
That was a thing.
Didn't know. Thought I had to have limitless capacity, which when you think about the number of businesses that thrive on their employees thinking they do have to have limitless capacity, right? Yeah. That they have to say yes. Even companies that think that's not what they're doing.
Oof.
Right?
Yep.
Right?
So exploitive. Yeah.
It is, but in ways that people that are so ingrained that we forget. You can't, someone who's not me, I've heard it in lots and lots of places. Dominant culture is the water we're swimming in, right? Yes, we don't even know that we're swimming in it. So it impacts us all in really, really significant ways. So when we talk about capacity here, again, non-exhaustive list. Please reorder to your liking. Add things that are true for you. And so systems of oppression impact our capacity. Yeah. Actual people, the time of day, your physical well-being, how much food you've had or not had, the activity, your emotional well-being, your body chemistry, the weather, sleep, right? These are all things. And there's probably a much longer list. Mm-hmm. And then from there, I say, what are some of the choices you're making to guard your capacity? So these are, and in many of these, I have left examples from my own life because it just makes it a little bit easier for people to get. So,
Absolutely.
So for me, I'm a morning person. I do big brain stuff in the morning. 10 o'clock is good for me. I'm up at 5 a.m., right?
Holy moly.
Yeah, it's weird.
Jealous.
But if you call me at 5 p.m., what I actually find, I start losing my words. That's how it's manifested for me in quarantine. That is definitely a quarantine thing. I will
brain fog.
Yeah, but it comes out in vocabulary. I have a pretty decent vocabulary on most days. It also comes out if I'm writing things in homonyms. I will use the wrong version of a word. Like, okay.
So don't call Liz after 5.
Don't call Liz after 5 if you want to like real conversation. If you want to talk about dumb stuff in small words, great.
Awesome. Yeah.
And then I do a lot of tech support for people. I facilitated over 150 digital meetings in 2019. And so people will come to me asking me for that. And I realize I actually have limited capacity to talk to people about how to use Zoom better. So I just have to limit it. Be sure to connect with energizing people and limit the draining people. Don't have back-to-back meetings. And here's my other pro tip. I can say I have a hard stop even if there's nothing else in my calendar.
Yes. It's so much of this obviously is boundary work, right? Which is
Yeah. And my favorite person who teaches about boundary work is Bunny Mackenzie Mack. They are listed in my Debts of Gratitude. They are listed on my website. They are an anti-oppression consultant out of Chicago, and they do a lot of discussion of boundary work. So,
amazing.
And then I have a note about time of day because I don't want anyone thinking that because I work better in the morning, they should work better in the morning, right? So, from there, we talk about points of difference. I'm not going to show you all of them. But the idea is we're different than other people in significant ways. Pick the ways that come up for you and then talk to the people in your life that you work with and ask them to sort of rate themselves on the same scale. So for me, one of the more important ones is this introvert extrovert. And it's just, this actually makes a great Zoom poll. 1 through 5, where are you? You can see in the company where you actually are.
All right, everybody, 1 to 5, introvert, extrovert. Let's do it.
Do it. 1 to 5, introvert, extrovert. Because I'm like a 1.5 introvert.
Oh, wow.
I'm playing something else right now, but I'm
I'd be like a 2.5.
But my family are all 5s. My family are all 5s.
0.
Right? Which causes, and it's just, to me, having language, so much of this is having language around what you already know.
Yeah.
Right? So
we've got, I know you can't see the chat, but we've got people putting in like 0, 1, 3, 5.
Perfect.
It depends, right? Sometimes contextually, certain situations are going to.
Exactly. And so there is enough space here. You can write, okay, sometimes it's this, sometimes it's that. One of the other ones that I learned the hard way, I learned most things the hard way.
Yeah, don't we all? That's how it really becomes embedded, right?
Narrow it down. I grew up in what I will call a very high heat household. There was a lot of yelling. There was a lot of, that was like a baseline.
The norm.
The norm, total norm. And so now I have said to other people that I organize with, I'm like, you have to come at me with a knife before I realize something is wrong, because yelling at me doesn't register, right? Yelling doesn't register for me. We're all living in our trauma, right? It's fine.
Oh, yes.
But someone else that I organize with didn't grow up that way and gets really, really shut down by a higher heat conversation. And we actually went many months without talking about it. We just had a meeting that we went with. Both of us left upset. And we buried it, didn't talk about it. I ignored her. She ignored me. And it wasn't until we had another project that we really needed to work on that I was like, oh, we got to talk about this like grown-ups.
Like name the thing. Let's talk about it.
Thing, right? And talk about it. And so now I know, and I would say this to everyone, figure out where you are in terms of conflict, like what it feels like for you. And then I know the 3 or 4 high heat people in my life that if I want to vent about something that's in a high heat way, I go to one of them. Right. And I keep it away from the people that I know are going to be dysregulated just by that idea. And so there's little ways, as we realize the ways that we're different, we realize the ways that we start to be able to work on how do we bridge that gap between people. So,
you know what's interesting about this guide is it feels like not only is it a tool, like you're really learning about yourself, but it does feel like it's actually building compassion for other people at the same time, because you're like, oh, right, not everyone operates that same way.
It's trying.
It really does feel,
trying.
It feels like it's really thoughtful.
So from there, there's some exercises that I cite from other people. Brene Brown in her book, Dare to Lead, has this values exercise, which is here, which is figure out what your 2 values are. She has basically a list of like 100 things, which is under this toggle. Marie taught me how to toggle, changed my life. But the first time we did it, I was like, what? You can do that?
What did you just do?
So the values are all there and you have to pick 2. And it's a really important tool in terms of accountability, because you develop skills to be accountable to your own values. And so that is from versus I'm going to wait for someone to hold me accountable. If I'm in conversation with someone and I know I'm acting out of alignment with my values, I can have that conversation and go, you know what? I didn't show up in a way that I wanted to. Can we talk about it?
I love that.
So values is one. And then another one that will change your lives. Jake Ernst is a therapist out of Toronto. He does a lot of trauma-informed work. He did a course on becoming trauma-informed, which I was a part of. He has a fabulous Instagram. It's MSW Jake. So like Masters of Social Work Jake. And he developed a model called Roots of Safety, which is basically love languages, trauma-informed love languages. Wow. And so in here, the idea is there's 8 of them. And one of the other things I love about Notion is this links out to the Instagram, right? You can, actually, this is a screenshot, but the Instagram is linked because I don't always love the way that it crops.
Well, I think you can't link images too, right? I think you can link the captions, but
you can. It's a little wonky. So this is a screenshot, and then the link is there. But there's 8 roots of safety, and the idea here and in here under the toggles, you'll see them all broken out. But the idea is, what are your roots of safety? What makes you feel safer? And what's nice is that there's so much discussion right now, at least in the part of Instagram that I am in, that talks all about breath work and meditation. Not a single thing wrong with breath work and meditation. Not the only thing that can work for people. And so by saying, okay, we want everyone to have time to meditate, for certain folks, meditation actually doesn't feel safe. So what are your roots? And I think as a leader, one of the jobs is to make sure that the roots of safety are open, because everyone gets to define them for themselves, but they've got to have that space. So figuring out what your roots are, I would say to anyone, get look at Jake's work. His website is also mswjake.com, which is handy. He is nothing if not consistent. And he's got stuff that you can download on his website as well about it. And he's been on my podcast talking about this stuff. Yes, so it's exciting. So this people bit takes another Notions piece and also could change people's lives. So someday I might actually offer just this people bit for free to people.
Lead magnet.
So this, one of the things that I say to people is you need to have folks in your workplace who will support you in naming your needs at work. And I have had clients that I've worked with say to me, Liz, I don't know who those people are. I don't know who they're going to be. And the nervous system piece is that your nervous system learns through experience. So if I go to the wrong person first, I will never try again.
Oh, wow.
Because I will have confirmed my suspicion that I'm actually not allowed to have needs at work, that no one is going to support me, because that's what I think already, right?
The world is not safe. Yeah.
No one is here for me. And so the question was, how do I find the people to start with? Sometimes people like to start with the hardest thing. Don't start with the hardest thing. Start with the easy thing. Get a run on the board, right? Get a run on the board. And so these 4 questions are what you ask. And I would challenge people to just ask these questions about the people that you work with and sort your people. Just sort your people. And you'll see, I'll scroll down. But the 4 questions are, and you go 1 to 5. Everything is meant to be able to do in a Zoom poll, but you go 1 to 5. What do you feel like after interacting with this person? 1 is energized, 5 is drained. What does hard feedback feel like this person? 1 is okay, because hard feedback never feels great. 5, like dying. How encouraging of your needs is this person? So very to not at all. And then how often are you misunderstood? Note, this does not say how often do you misunderstand each other. For this one exercise, I don't give a flying fart in space about anybody else. We are only talking about how often are you misunderstood. And so it's things like, do they find you funny? Right? Do you have to explain your jokes to people? Because that's actually misunderstanding. That's misunderstanding, right? It doesn't always have to be these like big things. So from there, you get a number. And those numbers fall into these 5 categories. Your team, your supporters, swayable, questionable, and unsettling. And this is all for your nervous system. You are not making a value judgment about these people. You are just saying, how do they work with my nervous system? And so you find the people that are in your team. These are people who are just waiting to support you. They are waiting. All you got to do is ask. And they probably are like, I wish I could have supported you sooner. Supporters are pretty up there, but might require a little bit more work. And then the other 3, what I recommend is looking at where the needle moves, because there's lots of ways to get to that math. So it also will tell you how can you work on that relationship if you want to, which is like, if I know one of the big things about a certain person that I work with is that we misunderstand each other a lot. Let's work on how do we do that? How do we do it better? And so remember, people can move. Now down here, we've got a table with some views.
A little CRM. Yeah.
A little table with some views. And so your people, you put in their numbers. And then it gets a bucket number. And then you do have to, I haven't figured out. If someone wants to tell me, if someone knows the way to make this automatically do it, then please tell me. I couldn't find it. But either
Danny,
way,
some formulas. We've got Danny here is amazing with formulas.
yes,
I'm sure
perfect.
he can help you
You
figure
can
that out.
see there what they are. And then, you know, how much energy do I have for them? What works best with them? What doesn't work? You can actually build out your CRM however you want. And
this
then,
is so cool, Liz.
and then in your gallery view, right, we made a header. These are obviously unsplash photos. They're pretending to be people. So you can sort them in that way. One of my clients said to me, I don't want to have pictures of the unsettling people. And I'm like, great, pick an unsplash photo that's a dog. I don't care. Right? Like, so it doesn't have to be their picture if you don't want to. And then on the team page, you actually you just link to the people who are your team in there. And then how can my team support me? So yeah.
I love this so much, Liz. This is really, really brilliant. And I think it reminds me a bit of Brene Brown in one of those interviews where she said to outline on a tiny Post-it note the people in your network that support you. So I think even if you're not dealing with a team, if you're like solopreneur, when you're running your ideas by someone, don't be asking the people that aren't your super supporters. Start with the people who are who are safe, that can give you that honest feedback before you're trying to go bigger, right? So who's safe in your network, right?
Yeah. And it's a good framework just for thinking about a lot of relationships. It doesn't have to just be work, but so I'm going to skip some pages. There's also a piece in messaging there that is about how do you actually talk about it with other people.
Yeah.
But this is maybe one of my favorites. So in here, we all get in like deep, dark places and can't remember we're good at things. I know a lot of people that's true. It's definitely true for me. Yes. So what I wanted was a place where people could put all the things that like make them feel good. So I've put in, there's a little audio from me that says, I believe in you. There's also, I'm a One Direction, Harry Styles, Louis Tomlinson fan, right? I am a fan of all of them. And there's a clip from a 2015 concert where Harry Styles is just saying, "You look fabulous." He's actually saying it to Liam's dad, which is hilarious and funny. But it's fun, right? So things that make me laugh. Kate Allen does this sort of artwork that I always find helpful when sort of digging out of a hole. But the idea is put all your stuff. For me, I have letters from former students of mine that I find really helpful. You could have people record audio for you. You could have people record video for you. But it's a place to keep it all. And because Notion exists in the ways that it does, it means that it's on your phone when you need it, right? Yeah. So that's the, there you go. I'm trying to show you a reasonable amount of stuff
without showing too much,
without going through just the whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, there were like so many nuggets too. I'm like, oh, I want to go deeper on that. Like I saw there was the slippery behavior or something with the values one. That looked really interesting.
Yep. There's supportive and slippery behaviors. So you name what those are.
And those are your own behavior, like things you notice that when you do.
Yes. Oh. So like for me, my values are belonging and efficiency. Let's talk about that. Yeah. And so one of the slippery behaviors for me is that, like I mentioned with the one person that we had sort of conflict stuff with, was isolating myself. That's out of alignment with my value of belonging, is that if something goes wrong, to not try and still be not try to repair, but to avoid, is actually against that value of mine.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love this guide so much, Liz. And I think you've got a lot of great, people in the chat too that are saying this is fantastic. Danny asked a very important question, which is, how long did it take to decide which emoji goes with each section?
Oh, totally. Some of them are super easy, right? You've got this section on life sucking. That's obviously got to be the poop face. Some of them are a little bit more of a stretch. The introvert, extrovert. I think the bear is the ultimate introvert, right? So that's why it's a bear. Yeah. So some of them are a little bit harder, and some of them feel like they make a lot of sense.
Yeah. I'm curious. I know this is kind of a new guide that you've created, but it's obviously based on work that you've been doing with clients and with organizations. Have you been beta testing it with any of your existing clients to kind of have people go through the guide and like really sit with it and get that feedback?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So basically, this guide is the result of pieces that were beta tested and then put into it. That was like, okay, what works for folks, what doesn't, how are we having these conversations? They're all testing. They're at various different Notion aptitudes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the stuff got tested before it went in the field guide, and then it's also getting tested. And then one of the things that I do when you buy it, you get a PDF that has the Notion link, and that PDF is a bit of an intro. And in it, it's like, my hope and dream is that this becomes something where people are emailing me and saying, hey, I added this piece and I think it's great. Because the idea is to have, and once you buy it, I will send you future versions as they come, which is a little dicey because of the way Notion works and what have you. But the idea is there. But to have people go, hey, this really, really worked for me, and I hope other people can use it, and to be able to add it and have that feedback from other folks. So we're in it.
Do you build any of that? Yeah. Do you build any of that language into the document itself? People can duplicate it. Is it like, hey, I'd love to hear what you do with this guide. I'd love for you to send me that feedback. Is there that language in there so that people know that they should kind of reach out and share how they've been using it? Amazing. This is such a thoughtful guide. And I think, obviously, again, this is based on your own experience and your work, but I think anyone who works with clients that kind of has a process that they take people through, I think this is just such a beautiful way to demonstrate this extra like value add that, again, if you're just doing like one-on-one consults, that's one thing, but having this extra resource that people can go back to. And I think it really helps position you as an expert and just shows how much thought I think has gone into your process.
Well, and to your point, I've always done one-on-one work with folks, but in a less productized way. And I am actually working on the language on my website now, which is to go through and develop your own, to use the field guide as a scaffold, and then to be in conversation and it's like a 6-month kind of engagement of what that looks like. And so that is coming soon. If people want to do it, they can just talk to me on my website. But
I could actually see it's almost like buy it and do it on your own, or like have Liz walk you through this process, and you're kind of helping ask the right questions and kind of elicit some of these answers. That's kind of an interesting way to do it too. Together.
And then we figure out what additional pieces you need, what ones you don't, what we can add. That's the idea.
And I think sometimes too, it's probably difficult to answer those questions for yourself if we're in the thing and we're maybe not even aware of the thing that we're doing and holding back in certain ways. And even just to have a coach kind of say like, is that really true? Or are you playing small? Are you maybe not really fully naming what you need right now? And just having someone kind of work with you through that.
Well, and we all need someone who is willing to say, yes, you are allowed.
Oh, yes.
Yes, you are allowed, right? Like that permission is, and I will tell you, one other person, doesn't matter who it is, in your life who is willing to reflect that back to you will change your relationship with this if it's something that you struggle with. One, you don't need 10, you need one other person who will say, yes, you're allowed to be a person with needs.
Yeah. You got to find the people,
Find
find your team, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I've definitely had coaches like that reflected back, and it was incredibly eye-opening. It's like, oh, okay, time to do some therapy around this because there's a thing here that hasn't been named in a long time. So powerful.
Mhm.
Does anyone have any questions for Liz, whether it's about the guide or the process or any part of it?
You want me to leave it on screen or should I take it off so we can see each other?
Totally up to you. Yeah, I guess it depends if people want to see anything else, or are there any other? I know you mentioned you were working on like a teen version of this.
Yeah.
Is that right?
It's not, there's nothing to show you yet that's different, but I am working on a teen because I was telling Marie, I used to be a high school dean of students, and I have a lot of love in my heart and compassion, yeah, for what a high school experience really looks like, right? And for all of you who are parents having kids at home right now and what that looks like, right? This is a whole other kind of thing. And so I am working with some different high school students now, middle school, high school students, to because the needs sort of stay the same, particularly when you're talking about school. But some of the language is a little bit different. We're making certain things shorter. We're talking about TikTok videos instead of, it's one of those things where it's like, if you can't say it in 60 seconds, we're not listening. And put it to a soundtrack, stuff like that. I mean, it won't be quite like that, but
a little more playful,
but it'll be more playful. The language is a little bit different, so we can make sure that we're being really accessible about it, right? So
relevant. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm so impressed by this guide. I know you shared a sample with me, and I haven't gone through to do it for myself, but having you walk through it, I'm like, oh, there's so much goodness here. And I know, especially my husband's like, these are great questions, and he works with a team too, so I think it'd be so good to go through that process for himself as well. I hope Ben agrees with that. Even for couples, when's the couples edition coming out for this?
Right. I mean, so it's interesting. I work with, my thing is about people at work, right? Because I think we are giving away, we spend half our waking hours at work. And if we are unwilling to make our lives better for half of our day, why are we ceding that much of our day?
We compromise so much, right?
Yeah, but some of my clients are stay-at-home moms and they also have real challenges around, like, what do your needs look like? How do I name my needs in the context of trying to raise kids who aren't traumatized? Right? What does that look like?
Well, when it feels like you're taking care of children, so you're sort of full-time focused on someone else's needs, and you get used to just being there for everyone else's needs. You forget you're a human being that has your own needs.
So I keep it like it is, because the other piece for me is that I am not a marriage and family therapist. I'm not a therapist at all. And I'm a person who has been through a lot of things and lived a lot of lives and paid a lot of attention. That's the shortest version. There's more detail about on my website if you want to look at it. But that's the shortest version. And I don't want to get into marriage and family where you're talking about like physical abuse, because not that people can't be abused in the workplace. I do believe people do, but the aggregate looks different. So
we'll leave that to the family therapists, right?
We'll leave that to the family. But the ideas will, if you can name what you need and not want people to be clairvoyant.
Love it.
You can shift a lot of things.
Yeah. I love it so much, Liz.
Are there other things people want to see? Are there things that people want to see in here? Other questions, other thoughts?
Sinead was asking, this is so close to work my sister is doing. Will this be available after? I'm not sure if you're referring to the field guide itself or the recording, but you can always check out this recording again, and you can, share this Crowdcast link with your sister. Obviously, the field guide is a paid guide, right? It's $50 right now. So we won't be sharing Liz's, actual template or anything like that, but you're more than welcome to purchase it and support Liz if you think it's really great. Let us know if there's other questions, other things you want to see either in Liz's space. I'm always curious kind of how long did it take to put it together? Did you have it kind of put together in another medium, or did you just kind of start playing in Notion and moving things around and exploring? What did that look like?
Yeah, I started the field guide in April. And so it was a quarantine project for me. And it started as a Pages project, and of course I got very into like laying things out. I like to lay things out.
It's fun, yeah.
But something wasn't quite right, and then so I had a lot of the work, and then so it came out maybe a month ago, or just under a month ago, I think. And it maybe took me probably a week to really
format it in Notion.
Yeah, to put it into Notion, to figure out what I wanted. Part of that trouble was that there's probably 50 more pages that I want to exist.
The editing is so hard.
It's the editing, and it's the going, okay, we're doing this.
We're shipping it.
We're shipping it. Yeah, we're shipping it. And one of my friends, my best friend, who is my one person, I told you, when she came into my life, it just went in a different way. She was like, okay, what's V2? What's V2 of this, right? So
you're already on to V2.
We are on V2. So it probably was it was really a week or so of figuring out the pieces that I wanted from the stuff that already existed, and then figuring out how to lay it out in Notion in a way that made sense. Yeah. And in the way that tracking it through, okay, what's the order? And you don't have to do it in order. But I was like, what if you wanted an order? What is the order if you wanted it? So
yeah, I love it. I always get so inspired when I see other people's Notion work and Notion products. So I'm like, why have I not productized that piece that I do over here with clients? So it's so great, Liz.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to, chat about, cover, dig into?
I mean, I would say for folks who want to implement stuff even at work, one of the things that I do with corporate clients is we take those points of difference, and then we do the Zoom polls. So you can see on screen where your team is. And that is eye-opening for a lot of people. Just that one exercise of talking about the ways that we're different.
Yeah. Because it's one thing to do that guide and you have it's hidden in your Notion, but unless your team is aware of even how you're rating some of these things, it's not going to be as valuable, I guess. So that's really interesting.
So opening up those conversations. I also like, and I say this in, I think in the intro piece, you can broach a conversation with somebody by saying, a friend of mine does this. I know it sounds weird. Can we do it anyway? I'll be your friend, right? And I will be your social proof that you are bringing to somebody else. That is totally fine. And
Liz
so
says it's okay.
Right? that I think there is that sort of conversational piece where people don't know how to jump into it. So again, there's the section on messaging that talks about some of this. And we need that in. There's also a good in terms of COVID as well that says, hey, we've all had to look kind of our own capacity in the face. Can we be talking about it? Because we need something that sort of breaks that pattern of what has existed before.
I love that. That's so awesome, Liz. Seriously, I just think you've done such a tremendous job with this, and I'm like, your work is super interesting to me, and I think your site is so gorgeous too. So it's love a good website.
You're like,
I can appreciate how much effort and time goes into putting your work out there, putting it out in ways that are really digestible, finding the right words to communicate what you do in a way that resonates with other people. Like, all of that takes so much work, right? We are all.
I'm not sure we're there yet.
We're always a work in progress, right? Our website content and copy is always a work in progress. But I think you've done a really good job, and I'm excited to see how it continues to evolve. So
I will say that's actually one of my favorite things about Notion, right? Is that it makes it so much easier to be a work in progress, because you can just go in and like shift things around and fix it and move it. Things feel less fixed. And I think that's a good way to be, right? I think it makes it a little bit easier versus like website feels a little bit more
like, it's done. My website is launched.
Right. I mean, fixed. I shifted it this week around some of this. So
yeah, I think you bring up a really good point too, which is why I think some people do struggle with Notion, because there is those perfectionistic tendencies where you're like, I want it to be ready and done in the way that I want it to be. And it can take so long to get it to the point where it feels more finished. But I'm much more comfortable in that gray area, maybe more like you, where I'm like, whatever, like next weekend, I'll just tweak it. And I like that. And I kind of live in that space. But for some folks, I think just, why can't I just get the tool and it works? It's a different kind of vibe. And so I think what's cool about Notion is I think it actually does force you to be a little bit more in that discomfort of like, it's emerging. There's emergence happening. There's a creative process happening as you're building.
Yeah.
I agree.
I see it that way, and I like it. So
I feel like it's a tool that makes you think a little differently. Like it kind of opens up possibilities. And I'm sure even as you're building it, you're like, oh, I could link to this directly. Oh, I could make a table and then embed the table. Like it probably helps you think a little bit more creatively in that process.
Well, and also I just love the ability to embed all the things, right? I can take every video from TikTok that there's a video of a cat getting like, that's under a blanket, like just being pet. And it's maybe the most soothing video you'll ever watch.
I love that.
There's also a guy who makes forest food. So he's just got a knife and a cast iron skillet and makes all sorts of stuff. And it's like, and I'm like, okay, I'm about to put those in my field guide because they just make me feel better. And I think there's stuff like that where we imagine that things are off limits at work, when really what I want to say is, again, you have permission. If it's Harry Styles, great. If it's the guy with the pot, great. If it's, a spreadsheet, fine. If it's a doodle, fine. Whatever. Who cares?
Yeah.
So
Liz has given you permission. Use her as your friend that told you it was okay.
Use the excuse. Always.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being so generous too, and just showing us so much of the behind the scenes. It's amazing. I'd love to hear, from folks who are watching. Did you find this interesting? I think there were so many powerful questions in there, and I hope the guide inspires you. Maybe
did we miss any like questions that people had?
Yeah, did any pop up in the chat?
I don't really think so. I just see people saying hi.
Yeah, lots of hellos.
And then also where are you on an introvert scale? Ben is a 0.
Ben is a 0. That's my husband.
And you are a what, 2.5?
I'd say I'm yeah.
So
every time
you look like a giant extrovert to him, is what that is.
Yeah, basically. So the link to the guide, the sort of sales page for the guide, is that green button below Liz's field guide there. So if anybody wants to check that out. And again, I just think it's an aspiring point of reference. If anyone here too, I think, is thinking about maybe productizing any of their own processes too. I just think the way you've presented it, walking people through Notion, acknowledging that Notion is going to, maybe be a new tool that some people aren't familiar with. And so just making it really accessible and saying, don't worry, like, it's pretty easy. I'm going to walk you through how to use this.
Well, I do have a video that's in the document that is just, here's how you duplicate a thing to note. Like, here's how you open a Notion account, and here's how you Thanks, Ben.
Thanks, Ben. I think that'll be great for his team. Yeah, I think that's
Perfect.
going to be awesome.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and if people are like, yeah, I'm not buying it, but I love these concepts and I want to do something with them, like my email is all over the place. So like, come talk to me here on Instagram.
And is Instagram your
Instagram is my preferred. I'm also on LinkedIn, but
cool.
Basically at Wiltsie is me just about everywhere because my name is not that common. And thanks, Notion. And so that's me on Twitter, although I haven't been on Twitter since like 2011, except to tweet at Marie to say, hey. Thank you, Kimberly.
Amazing. Yeah, nice. Sinead was saying that it was so aligned with the work their sister was doing, really eye-opening. So I think it's just so wonderful, super inspiring. So I hope you get a few sales, Liz.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your generosity and sharing.
Thank you. Have fun. Have a lovely,
have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye, friends.
Take care, Liz. Thank you so much.
Thank you.